My name is Angie, and this is the story I wasn't supposed to find.
And I'm our sister, Cindy. We started this podcast with one name, Stella Smith, our great-grandmother, a woman who gave up 2 daughters, disappeared from history, and left behind almost nothing.
No photos, no grave, no explanation, just a blank space where a person should have been.
Until a DNA test changed everything. Turns out, Stella Smith wasn't even her real name.
Her name was Estrella Suarez. She came to America from Spain as a child. She married twice, left 2 families, and somehow managed to vanish not once, but twice from history.
In season 1, we found Estrella's beginnings in America. We found family we didn't know existed. We sat across a table from cousins who'd been looking for the same woman we had from the other direction. And we thought we were closing a chapter.
We were wrong.
Because season 2 is where things get even more complicated and even more personal. New relatives surface, new documents turn up, and some of the answers we finally found led to questions we'd never thought to ask.
This is Buried Threads, a podcast about family secrets, silence, reinvention, and what happens when the past refuses to stay buried.
We've recently been doing these Hanging Threads episodes where we share about what we're currently researching. And today we want to give an update on one of those hanging threads, and that is regarding Marie Christine's adoption files.
Yeah, let's begin with a little background on this. Marie Christine was born to our great-grandmother, Estrella Suarez, going by Stella DeBoard, and her husband, Christopher Columbus DeBoard, in 1928 in Springfield, Illinois. At some point, Marie Christine was turned over to the Illinois Children's Home and Aid Society in Sangamon County, where Springfield is. We have a newspaper clipping of Estrella or Stella being discharged from the hospital, which the timing would have been shortly after Marie Christine's birth. But the address that she was released to was Etta Montgomery's estate. So we question whether Marie Christine was with her from birth or with someone else. We know Christopher's parental rights were terminated in 1932 in Sangamon County, and Marie Christine spent at least 2 years with Noah and Nellie Hickman in McDonough County, just outside of Macomb, near Colchester, before they fully adopted her in 1934. And the adoption took place in McDonough County under Judge T.H. Miller, and the attorney was Attorney Eugene Hampton.
Now, it took us a long time and a lot of work in multiple counties to finally find out where that adoption took place.
Yeah, it was quite the saga between Sangamon County, Knox County, and McDonough County, and you chasing down all that information. Next, we wanted to know where Marie Christine was prior to living with the Hickmans, prior to 1932. Did she spend any amount of time with Estrella or Stella, her mom? Was she in a foster home? We know that Florence was in a foster home. Was she ever with her sister, Florence, for any amount of time? So, of course, we went after her adoption records.
When we thought her records were in Sangamon County, I talked to the county clerk, quickly and easily got a judge's order to release the files, but they weren't there. The McDonough County clerk told us the files were impounded. So requests were filed. Then we found out we were actually suing the county clerk. Oops. And we went to virtual court twice. And that's where we are now.
We were given a second hearing with the judge. You filed everything necessary. So let's talk about what happened at the second hearing, which was actually just this last week.
It was. This is very fresh. So just before the hearing, I believe it was on the Monday, the day before the hearing, I received a letter in the mail. And it was from the state's attorney. And basically, it was just a really formal letter saying that there was a state's attorney who was representing this clerk in this hearing. So once again, we had this feeling of we really are suing. He has an attorney now, and here, nothing but the state's attorney in this hearing. And so we went to court.
Right.
My mom, me, Cindy, and our brother Jason were all present virtually, and then the judge and the state's attorney were there in person. So it was a little more formal. I was told to be quiet. I will say that. But first, the state's attorney was allowed to respond, to respond to the motion. What do you think about this? And so he said, he kind of seemed a little bit, I don't know, dismissive and a little bit maybe flabbergasted. He's like, we're not opposed to this on the merits, but this isn't the right way. Suing is not the way to do this, and you're just doing this the wrong way. And so at that point, the judge then asked my opinion, what do I think about it? And I wanted to look right at the judge because if you remember, I literally asked the judge in the last hearing, am I doing this the right way? And she said yes. So I wanted to look at her like,
right.
But I didn't. I just said, well, I'm sorry if I'm not doing this the right way. but here we are, and I'm asking for your help. The judge turned to the state's attorney and said, well, if she were going to do it differently, how would you like to have seen it done? And he said, well, all she needs is a judge's order. And she said, okay, then I will give a judge's order. He also kind of made reference that it was kind of a rare request for records this old. So I don't think it's something that they see very often. And that the records are probably in a dusty old attic somewhere. Didn't know if they would even have the records. They wouldn't really give us really any information about that. So the judge ordered that the clerk go and find the records, and that when the records are found, that they were to be delivered to her, and that she would review them on camera, which I was very confused by that statement. And actually you were confused by it also. We kind of both... Yes. We're trying to figure that out. Evidently, it's nothing to do with an actual virtual court. It's just I don't know, like a legal phrase.
Latin.
That basically
it's Latin, like in camera. Latin? Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. So anyways, that she will look at it privately, and then she will decide what to release to us. And so the order was given, and, there we went. 2 days later, less than 48 hours later, I received a letter by email. It was typed up on letterhead, but then it came as an attachment on an email. It was sent to me from the judge's administrative assistant, or administrative, clerk. And it was just letting us know that the clerk could not locate them, and said that they're old and maybe they just weren't indexed. Here we go again.
Yeah. Well, and pardon me for saying so, but I found it interesting that the state's attorney even commented on how much work this would take, because, he referred to they're probably up in a dusty old attic somewhere, and talked about how laborious it would be to look for it. And yet you had a response within 48 hours. Yeah. So I'm like, how could you have possibly looked really in 48 hours if it was that laborious,
Correct.
So it's super disappointing. But like you said, here we are. So now the question is, what are our options? What are our next steps? What can we do?
Yeah. So both you and I kind of went down a rabbit hole of like doing some research of, kind of what's next, and kind of came up with a fairly new ideas on both sides, but a fairly similar plan of action. And so this is on a weekend right now that we're talking. So Monday morning, I'm going to make another filing into the case. And this is where the state's attorney may have said that I did things wrong. I'm using air quotes, did things in the wrong way, that I could have done a much simpler way if I just got a judge's order, which I would love to know how the simpler way was, because I didn't find this to be easy either. But the advantage is we now have the judge's attention. We now have an open case. And so for as long as the judge is with us on this journey, that judge can compel action forward. I don't know how the judge is going to respond. I'm hopeful in a positive way, but this could be to our benefit, that the fact that we did it the wrong way, but now we have this audience. We have a judge who's, possible and to listen. And so I want to test that out and just see, rather than just walk away and say, oh, okay, never mind, just push this as far as I can and see if we can get some additional help from the judge, who seems to have been helpful up to this point. So what that filing is going to do is basically just going to acknowledge the fact that he couldn't find the records doesn't mean the records don't exist. And so the first thing is to be able to show proof, because I have not produced it. I've mentioned this, but I have not showed proof of this yet, to show that newspaper clipping that shows the name of the judge that was presiding and the name of the attorney that represented, because that establishes that this did happen in this courthouse. It happened here. So the records must be here somewhere. Mm-hmm. Then to say, just because he wasn't able to find them doesn't mean they don't exist. Here are some ideas of other places to look. And then we just have created this kind of extensive list of different offshoots. So for example, maybe the actual adoption file and the way that he was expecting it to look wasn't there, but the judge is going to have a docket somewhere. So can we go find where it is on the docket? There's going to be several different things like that. And so we've just kind of made this list. We used our AI friend to help us make this list and basically say to the judge, please send him back to look again. And here's the places to look. And then one of the things that you in particular found is that, in the things that we can ask the judge, we can also ask the judge to allow you and I, or a certified genealogist, or all of the above, to go look ourselves. Like with the judge's permission, we could do that. We can go in and glove up, and we won't leave till we find it. Right. Or until we've looked at everything.
I'm happy to go to a dusty attic. I will go to a dusty attic to look for files.
We'll dig. The other possibility is to, and this might be a little bit harder because of the age, but we're going to try, is to reach out to the judge and the attorney. Now, obviously, they're both deceased at this point, right? But to be able to reach out because somebody has taken on their legal records. And you found that the attorney in particular was a pretty prominent attorney, but a judge's records and an attorney's records, they're not going to disappear. Nobody threw those away. So if we can find out who it is, and sometimes they stayed in a firm, that the firm still existed and might be there, or family might have them, or they might have turned them over to a historical society or whatever. But if we can find a way to track that angle down and see if we can get some help in that direction, that's another possibility. So those are the kind of the things that we want to do. The other thing is to go back to Sangamon County. Now, you've heard us talk about this many times where, we did some research or we found some information out and then we've operated on that as an assumption. But as we go back and try to re-look at it, we try to break that down and say, okay, wait, what did we actually ask? What did we actually find out? And what is our assumptions we made on that? And this is another one of those examples. So when I initially made the request to Sangamon County, the request that I made was for the adoption file. That's what I asked for, was the adoption file. And they came back and said it's not here, which now we know it's because the adoption happened in McDonough County. But remember, the documents also show that the termination of parental rights for Christopher happened in Sangamon County. So there are records there, but they might not be in an adoption file. They might be in a guardianship file. They might be in a juvenile record file, because that's what it would have been at that point. But she would have became a ward of the court in Sangamon County, and then that would have transferred to McDonough County. So it's possible I can go back to that clerk and ask in a different way, ask for more information that's just broader than when before I was just saying I need the adoption record. Here we go. And so that's another possibility of how we can track that down. And those are what we're looking at.
And specifically, if you remember, one of the letters was describing the adoption process to the Hickmans, one of the letters from the caseworker at the Illinois Children's Home and Aid Society. And they referenced that when Christopher's parental rights were terminated, that they would receive custody. So it might even be worth searching any cases where a child with this last name or this name or whatever, their custody was awarded to Illinois Children's Home and Aid Society. There's just multiple angles to look up there. But I remember that being mentioned in that letter, that they said they would get custody and then the adoption would proceed. And that was that whole keeping it secret thing. That way, when the adoption went forward, it would be under Illinois Children's Home and Aid Society and not the parent's name, which did not happen at all. There was no secrecy whatsoever, but that's another angle. Yeah. So there are still options, maybe more challenging ones to run down, but still some options available.
We're going to keep pulling those threads. That's what we keep doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're not giving up now. I mean, we can't sue the county clerk and just let it go. We're now at an interesting place in our search for more information about, I'm going to take a deep breath before I say this, about Estrella Stella Suarez, Stella Smith DeBoard, Estelle Scott, and Wilma Estelle Nelson, who, no matter what name you call her, was our great-grandmother.
Yes.
I was just thinking over what we have learned just in 2026. I mean, we're 7 months in to 2026, and the information that we have learned about her and our other relatives and the people we have connected with just in that amount of time is pretty incredible. We recorded our first season of this podcast a year ago. It was July of 2025. It was right after we met Paul in person. He and his sisters were really the first family members that we met in person. Or even talked to like that, really. And then since that time, we've connected with Ryan. And we found,
I was going to say, we recorded it in July, but then we didn't publish it or do anything with it except technical stuff until January. So really then everything you're going to say now is from January on.
No, that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In that time, we've connected with Ryan and we found Estrella's identity as Wilma Nelson. We found her married to William Nelson, found her 2 children, Francis and Edward, found out about her grandchild, Terry, and then her great-grandchild, Ryan. And we met Terry in person. We visited her grave under the name of Wilma, but it was Estrella's grave. Also, you'll remember, Angie, you received Christopher's VA record with the details of his arrest and imprisonment in Fort Leavenworth, his dishonorable discharge from the Army, and then the whole investigation. It was a lengthy file that revealed multiple uses of false identities to gain access to VA benefits. We received recordings of Nina, daughter of Manuel and Rosa, talking about her family And incredibly enough, including details about Estrella's marriage to Emilio and the day that she left. She told us the story of the day Estrella went missing. It really changed what we thought was true about where she left from. We now know where she actually left from. We thought it was Taylor Springs, and it wasn't.
And we know how she met Christopher, or at least where their paths crossed.
When she left, and then where she met Christopher and how their relationship started, we believe. And then we also found out about 2 major traumas related to children under the age of 2 that she witnessed or endured while she was still very young, 16 or younger. And that kind of changed our perspective on what might cause a mother to leave 2 families.
Yeah. We also found out about yet another marriage as Mrs. Estelle DeBoard to Walter Scott in Cook County, Illinois in 1934. I had to eat crow because I did not believe that he was even a real person, but that was proven to be false, that he is very much real and they very much were married. Yes. We found out that Marie Christine's adoption took place in McDonough County when she was 6, later than we thought, and that the records were impounded. We discovered Florence was married twice, the first one falling between her first engagement, which didn't end in marriage, and the marriage to Theodore Knoll later. We found another very close DNA match to our mom, and we have no idea who it is, have not been able to make any connection to him yet, but we are very anxious about that. Just it's cloaked in total anonymity until he decides to break out. Interestingly enough, just a side note, that website does say that person originally had their DNA test on Ancestry and then uploaded it here, which means that they have chosen to keep it private. They've chosen to hide it away, but they know, like they've seen it. They know that there's a close match. So for whatever reason, they've decided not
they can see all that. They have access to all your information, right?
Yep. Yeah. We've discovered so much just in 2026 that we've been updating you with these weekly episodes. During this time, some weeks more than others, but I mean, it has just been like a waterfall. It's been amazing, but a waterfall of information. I joked many times that I needed to start taking every Tuesday off of work because I would become inundated with the texts and the messages and the threads to chase down and whatever, and then try to figure out how to do my other things in the middle of all that. And so it's just been an amazing thing, but we're also at this place where that's slowing down a little bit. And so we're still researching. There's still lots of hanging threads, but we just aren't finding new information as quickly as we were.
And we know also that could change in a moment, right? I mean, in one moment, one piece of information can change. That's what happened, really began with Ryan, but then it continued to happen from there. What we need to do now is we need to take time to keep researching, to keep chasing this information. So we are going to cap season 2 with this episode. We'll continue to research, and we will come back with new episodes as we have updates and we have new information to share with everyone. Because we know people are interested and we want to keep telling the story. It's just taking a little bit longer to pull that information.
We love sharing with you every week, and we can't wait to share new information as we discover it. You've heard us mention we plan some family gatherings that are coming up soon, one sooner than the other. But anyways, we want to be able to give you updates on those as well.
Keep reaching out if you have information or ideas. We're Buried Threads, Facebook, Instagram, Substack. You can send us an email at buried.threads26@gmail.com. All the links are in our bio and all those various places. We still want to hear from you, or if you want to tell us about your journey and your own search, we want to hear that from you as well. This has been a wild ride, and we are not done yet.
Wish us luck as we continue to navigate the court system, and hopefully we can shake some things loose there. But in the meantime, keep pulling that thread.
Thanks for listening. If you're walking your own search through DNA, silence, or a name you can't quite place, you're not alone.
If you want to go deeper on this story, you can find us on Substack at buriedthreads.substack.com. That's where we release every episode, along with documents, photos, and the kind of details that don't always make it into the audio.
You can also find and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And if you haven't yet, subscribing or leaving a review makes a real difference in helping other people find us.
For more photos, recap videos, polls, and the occasionally chaotic behind-the-scenes moments, find us on Facebook and Instagram. We're at Buried Threads.
And if something we've shared has stirred something in your own family story, we really do want to hear it. Reach out. You might be surprised where a single thread leads.
Until next time, keep pulling the thread.
Just knowing she existed. She was real. She had a name.